Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg, and today we're going to talk about a decade. Not a decade of history or of art or even of film, but a decade of video games. 10 years is a pretty long time. For most things, I guess, in the span of the universe, not so much. But when discussing video games, at least, quite a lot changes in the course of 10 years. And coming up with a personal list of 10 favorite games from an entire decade is pretty tricky if you play a significant amount of video games, which I do. So the list, I mean, it wasn't like insanely difficult, I guess. My worry is, though, that I'm missing something. That I'm gonna put out this video and someone's gonna be like, "What, you forgot this?" And I'll be like, "Oh shit, that's supposed to be at number 4. Oh god, no." Hard to say. I mean, over the last 10 years, I've played so many video games. So many of them have just been like good. I mean, there's so many just good games in the last 10 years. Narrowing it down to the best of those good games, though, that's tricky. This top 10, I mean, normally when I do a top 10, it like the top 3 are pretty cemented, and then everything else is it could go this way, it could go this way. I would say 2 through 10 on this list. I don't know, depending on the day, maybe I would switch things out. Maybe something would not be on this list, that something else would get put in its place. You know, who's to say, really? This is basically just a snapshot of my thoughts at this moment. So, I guess we'll get into it. First, though, we have honorable mentions, and there could be slews of honor. I mean, people are doing top 100 lists, so it's very easy to have plenty of games discussed when talking about the 2010s. My honorable mentions are the games that I put together like a big list, a short list, I suppose, and then I picked out my 10 from there. So the honorable mentions are basically everything that didn't make it to the top 10. And there could be plenty. I mean, yeah, there could be plenty. That's the bottom line. But just a few honorable mentions, just so I can list them here, and then you know they're not on the top 10. Portal 2. When I first, a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting around with some people. We were talking about top 10 games of the decade, and I didn't even think of Portal 2 originally. Someone mentioned Portal 2, and I was like, oh yeah, that's got to be on the list. And here, lo and behold, it's not on the list. It's an honorable mention. It, like I said, any other day, maybe it could be on the list. It's an incredible game. For me and my money, it's such a big improvement over the first game as far as like puzzle design is concerned, storyline is concerned, the co-op mode, like all of it is such a big improvement. And it's pretty easily one of the best things Valve has ever put out. Which, considering they put out like Half-Life and Half-Life 2, it's pretty big. And I like, Half-Life 2, great game. Certainly would probably make top 10 of a 2000s list, but I think Portal 2 is probably better for my money, even though it didn't make the top 10. I mean, puzzle games, I don't tend to play that much. You're not going to find any puzzle games on my top 10. But it's a puzzle game with humor, and you've got Cave Johnson in there. it's sort of a, well, I suppose it's probably one of the best puzzle games ever made, I suppose, if you consider it just a puzzle game, which I do. So, I mean, Portal 2, if you haven't played it, like, you're talking about any, like, best PC games, like, exclusive to I don't think it even is exclusive to PC anymore. But, yeah, Portal 2, very good. Diablo 3. Diablo 2, one of my favorite games of all time. It's possible I've put more hours into Diablo 2 than almost any other game. There were summers when I was a young lad where it was just Diablo 2 from, like, the moment I got up, the moment you pass out, just every day for all summer. Just crazy. Diablo 3 came out, and at launch it was not overwhelming. I mean, I certainly played it quite a bit, and I got to Inferno mode, which does not exist anymore. And the itemization was just sort of lame. Inferno mode was I don't know how that passed testing. I don't know how they actually released that Inferno mode, because it was so stupid and so not casual friendly in any way. It was such a departure from, like, endgame Diablo 2 fun stuff. It was ridiculous. Over time, I would say it's probably, like, one of the most improved games of the last decade, from launch to its current state. They got rid of the real money auction house, which it was a very good thing they did that, because that was a disaster. They fixed the itemization with that huge patch. You know, the expansion came out, which was very cool. The rift system, seasons, the new classes. You know, there was a lot of really good changes. Without all that stuff, this wouldn't be anywhere near a top 10. With the changes, it becomes an honorable mention. Just because I never felt the same pull from Diablo 3 that I had from Diablo 2. I never felt such a yearning to constantly grind to get better gear, to make my character cooler and things like that. It just didn't quite get to that point. Very solid action RPG, you know, with loot and all that at this point. But if mods were allowed, I'd probably put, like, Diablo 2 Median XL, or whatever it's going by nowadays. Probably above Diablo 3. So, but still, very solid game, no doubt about it. I own it on both PC and PS4. And a few years ago, I was on vacation. All I had was my PS4. I played Diablo 3 like the entire time, because it's that same just sort of formula that once in a while it can just suck you in. So, very nice. Divinity Original Sin 2. Yes, this did not make the top 10, sadly. My first playthrough, I absolutely adored it. I thought, like, this is like a new pinnacle of CRPG goodness. It has everything we want. It's a big improvement over the first game, which I didn't love that much. I actually don't think I ever beat it. The character customization, the storyline, the environmental, like, effects, and being able to combine and switch things up, just turn-based goodness. And then after my first playthrough, I can't seem to ever really get back into it the same way. I'm not exactly sure what's happening. I've tried like 4 times now to jump back into it and be like, oh yeah, Divinity Original Sin, that's going to be so awesome. And then I don't know, maybe the start is just so boring on that little I don't know. It's not quite clicking again. But it makes an honorable mention just because of how awesome that first playthrough was. And really, like, setting the modern bar for CRPGs. Pretty incredible stuff. I mean, I guess as a side, I would also give an honorable mention to Disco Elysium. It almost feels too new to put on any sort of top 10 list. Because I don't think there's really practically no game on this list from 2019. Practically. Just feels sort of wrong. But I mean, it's unfair. But Disco Elysium would certainly get an honorable mention for being, well, I talked about it recently. You know about it. Moving on. Shovel Knight gets an honorable mention. It's a modern take on a genre that I'm not like super acquainted with. Like the Mega Man style, like old school platforming type games, DuckTales, and things like that. That I wasn't really. It wasn't part of my childhood or anything like that. But it's such a good game in itself, with such a good soundtrack, level design, boss design, all that good stuff. It's so well made that you don't even have to like bank on nostalgia or anything like that. It's just good. And then they kept putting out this new content year after year over year, and it was just the level of quality never dipped, and it was always like a new, unique experience. Shovel Knight and the company Yacht Club, I think, they really set a good example for like modern day indie titles. Great game. And finally, last honorable mention, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. This gets an honorable mention, one, because it was a great, fantastic game. It's also, I think, like the only game I've ever platinumed. The only game I've ever gotten every trophy or achievement for. Because I was just like obsessed with that game. When the PS4 came out, I got 2 games with it. One was Killzone Shadow something, some sort of Killzone, which was sort of a showcase of the PS4 and its technology, and it was a fine game. I spent far more time though with Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, which was a PS4 port from the PS3 version. Funnily enough, it was just a really gorgeous game, and obviously I was a fan of Assassin's Creed. But after Assassin's Creed 3, I was like, this series, I don't know, I'm kind of done with it. Then 4 came out, I was like, I'll give it a shot. Pirates are cool, this looks good. I need something to play on my PS4. Holy shit, I put so many freaking hours into that game. And I still don't even love, like, the ship combat parts and stuff like that. But everything else about that game really just perfected the old formula of Assassin's Creed before they switched everything up. It was really like the pinnacle of that design. So my brother's been wanting to get into Assassin's Creed, and his wife was like, "Oh, you should start with 2. That's the best one." I'm like, "No, you start with 4. That's the only good one nowadays." I don't think 2 even holds up anymore, but I would replay through 4. Anyways, those are the honorable mentions. There's plenty of other games I could mention here. I mean, obviously, there's so much good stuff out there in the last decade, but let's get into the list itself. Number 10. I'm sure this would be some people's number 1, but The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. This is sort of a tricky one to put on the list. Part of it is because it's sort of significant to me personally on the internet. I had that Let's Play of the game out there before the game released, and that was like my first taste of fame. And that was such like the craziness surrounding that Let's Play at the time, like, really overshadowed the game itself for me. And since the Let's Play was so popular, I dragged out the Let's Play for far longer than I normally ever would. And so for a long time, I was really just sick of that game and didn't want to touch it. And if that was that, I never would make it anywhere near this list. But mods came to save the day. As you might know, I'm a big fan of modding games. I think modders over the years have saved plenty of games and improved many others. But Skyrim specifically, I would never, not never, but practically never touch an unmodded Skyrim. It does not interest me. It's just, maybe it's been ruined for me now at this point, but I just have no interest in unmodded Skyrim. But with mods, it becomes a top 10 game. And I know plenty of people are going to be putting like The Witcher 3 on these types of lists. The Witcher 3 will not be on this list. I've actually never beaten it. And I should probably play through it at some point again and get back into it. But I would say if you're comparing like open world games, by default, probably Witcher 3 is better than Skyrim. I would be more likely to play unmodded Witcher 3 than Skyrim. But Skyrim has tremendous mod community, and The Witcher 3 doesn't. Now, whether or not that's because of like the size of the community itself, or Witcher 3 is just less allowed to be modded, I don't know. But if I go over like to the Witcher 3 Nexus and look at their mod list, it's especially compared to Skyrim, it's puny. And I know for some people, they like Ziggy and his wife loves Skyrim. Like his wife plays through it like every year, and she would never ever touch any mod. And it's insane to me. I can't even like wrap my head around it. So I get that some people like games unmodded as intended, blah blah blah, but I'm just putting it out there, mods put Skyrim at number 10 on this list, whereas normally it would not be here. Yeah. Number 9. Our first but not last PS4 exclusive, Horizon Zero Dawn. So, this game came out. I had started a Let's Play of it. I was playing through the game, and then Breath of the Wild came out, and I think I had just become like, I became obsessed with that at the time, and I just left Horizon Zero Dawn in the dust for a while. And then when I got back to Horizon Zero Dawn, I left it in the dust for a while because it was like open world games. I'm done with that for now. Just get out of here. I don't want any more of that collectible bullshit, just whatever. So when I finally got back to Horizon Zero Dawn, I started a new game and fell in love with it. Absolutely incredible experience. Graphically, story-wise, character-wise, setting itself. I mean, like the mix of like prehistoric type characters and futuristic robotic stuff. I mean, such a cool concept, executed so well. Just tremendous fun. I mean, I just had so much fun with that playthrough. And then the little DLC came out. I forgot what it's called, but it was like the ice frozen themed one. Not that incredible. I liked it, but it didn't. This game would still be on the list without that, is what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have anything specific that's like, this game does this better than anything else, and that's why it's here, and blah, 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 blah. It's just good. I mean, it just does so many things right. And I mean, like, the fact that you haven't, I mean, the fact that you have a bow is fine. Plenty of games nowadays you have a bow. But how much, like, how many mechanics they were able to pull off with just a bow, and like all the different arrow types and the other like different weapons you can get, like the wire caster, you know, all these, like, they really did something special with that combat system, to the point of they're really probably going to have to innovate pretty hard for a sequel to come up with like a bunch of new interesting mechanics that they didn't think of for the first one. I couldn't think of many, but yeah. So I mean, that very impressive stuff. Very impressive stuff. And I can't wait for a sequel to that game. Speaking of, number 8 is Zelda Breath of the Wild. So like I said, I switched off Horizon Zero Dawn for Zelda, so I guess it's appropriate that it is one point higher. Breath of the Wild is what saved the Zelda franchise for me. I was checked out of that series. I was done. I had no interest in another Zelda game. And then they came out with Breath of the Wild, and here it is at number 8. Some people actually really dislike this game. Maybe not really dislike, but don't care for it. Like my brother is a fan of Zelda. He grew up with Zelda games just as I did, and he liked Ocarina of Time and blah blah blah, Twilight Princess. He does not care for Breath of the Wild because it's open world. It's completely different. This isn't Zelda anymore. That's why I love it, because it's not Zelda anymore. It's an open world game, but it's unique. It's a unique open world game, which, I mean, that's hard to do at this point. That's hard to do. So many concepts have been done and retreaded and blah, blah, blah. Just the fact, I mean, it is the Zelda setting, which is, I mean, I have a lot of hate against Zelda, a lot of the games, but the settings of Zelda games in general are generally pretty nice. But just the fact that you can climb anything and climb anywhere across the whole map is such an awesome thing. I mean, I'm really hoping that like sets a new trend for any open world game. That level of freedom is just essential now. And yeah, it really blows when it's raining and you can't climb anything and it pisses you off. But when it's not raining, boy oh boy, it's incredible. And just, I've never felt such glee at exploring an entire region of a world like I did for Breath of the Wild. I mean, my first playthrough of that game, when I first like climbed over a mountain and started entering into the fucking desert, it was just like, because I remember when I first entered the desert, it was at like, it's been a while since I played the game properly, but it was in like the section where there's all like these tall statues or something like that. It's like a ring of big ass statues. And that was my first encounter over there in the desert. I was like, holy shit, there's just, what is, like, this is so different from these like grassy plains that I've been messing around with. And it was just incredible. And then you go over to this other section, it's all like swampy and there's lightning. And it's like, oh, and then there's a dragonfly. Oh my God. You know, like the sense of discovery. Normally, I don't give a shit about exploration and discovery, but Breath of the Wild kindled that in me in a way never before. So that alone is just awesome. Combat wise, there is a lot of flexibility and options available to you with messing around with different and there is like that sort of Divinity-esque like interactions between elements and blah blah blah, which is very cool. The base like just sword combat is not incredibly thrilling to me. I wish that was better, but I mean, I could say that for any Zelda game, any 3D Zelda game. And the bosses, you know, like the four whatever guardians or whatever the hell they're called. That all, whatever. It's fine, and it's not like a highlight of the game. The highlight of the game is exploring the world, and I think that was really their goal, and they nailed the shit out of it. Number 7, God of War. So God of War 3, I believe, was actually released in the last decade. So that was also up for consideration, but I mean, and I do really like God of War 3. That's a great game in the old style of things. Really well done. As far as like the PS3 was concerned, that was like, if I was having people over and I wanted to show off the PS3, like, dude, bust out God of War 3. That was awesome. But yeah, God of War, the new one, really blows things out of the water as far as storytelling, graphic design, setting, character interaction, and combat. I mean, the combat's way better as far as I'm concerned. This game came out when I was like hip deep into Norse mythology, so it was just like a match made in heaven. I just got so into it. Yeah, I mean, because I was making the video. Norse mythology and God of War. I knew I wanted to do that. So I was just like so interested in every little tidbit of like lore that they had to show off, which that's very different for me usually when I play through a game. But it was such a unique playthrough that I had because of that. Such a cool experience. And I really got immersed in it. And the way that they evolved Kratos, I mean, because basically it's like, you know, if they would have just done like a God of War 4 and they just like, all right, here's another God of War game, Kratos, he's angry, he's gonna kill stuff, blah blah blah. They could have done it. It probably would have been fine and fun, and we're like, oh, look how good this game looks, and look how angry Kratos is. Look what he did to that god. Oh my lord. It would have been fine. But they went in a different direction, and it freaking paid off. Old man Kratos is awesome. His interactions with Atreus, interactions with all the Norse pantheon, the loss of his wife. I mean, it's second wife, really. Yeah, just when I mean, most games, when I think of the game, I think of the gameplay. God of War, I tend to think of the story first. I think about the different moments throughout the story. So they really knocked it out of the park with that. But the gameplay, I mean, obviously it wouldn't be on this list if the gameplay wasn't good. So yeah, it did it all right. Number 6, Uncharted 4. I don't know how many top 10 lists this is going to make it on. But you know, it's a personal list. I'm a huge fan of the Uncharted series. I just finished replaying them all for like the third time, fourth time, or whatever, including Lost Legacy. And I mean, Lost Legacy honestly could get like an honorable mention. That's such a good like little standalone game. Broken off of the main game. But Uncharted 4 really just showcases the, I guess, perfection of the Uncharted development. They went through all their little pitfalls, they had their mistakes, they had their high points, and it all came together at the end for Uncharted 4, which does everything as best as it could be. You know, Uncharted 1 was a really pretty cool game when it came out. Does not hold up. It's the only game I really don't care that much to replay through. Uncharted 2, huge improvement. My second favorite game in the franchise. A lot of fun, a lot of improvements. Far more replayable than the first game. But then they came out with Uncharted 3, which had some awesome set pieces. I mean, it was definitely like a showcase kind of game. Very cool. But there were some things off with it. And even on like easy difficulty, it tends to be a little frustrating for some reason. And I don't know, just replaying through it again, it feels like the gunplay for some reason is a little bit different than like 2 and 4. It just doesn't feel quite as good for some reason. Not sure why. And the third game doesn't really have like Sully. No, it's the second game that doesn't have Sully. The third game, the puzzles are a little obnoxious, more so than normal. But anyways, the fourth game gets it all right. The gameplay is fantastic. They have the new like stealth gameplay. The stealth sections is way better. Like your options available to you in any given like combat sequence or action sequence is way better than any other game previously. You can be stealthy. You can be swinging around on the rope because they introduced the rope. You can do the Superman punches. Just overall big improvement on all the combat stuff. But the characters and the story is where it actually really excels. Because they knew that this was like their final Uncharted games. They really wanted to go off and send things out with a bang. They bring in his brother, who we'd never heard of before, but okay. And it's just such a good emotional story. And every time I finish playing through Uncharted 4 at the end, I'm just like, damn, I can't believe it's over. I can't believe it's over. I get so invested, which is pretty uncommon for me. So yeah, it's every time I just can't. It's such an enjoyable experience though. Every time I replay through it. And graphically, it's just gorgeous. You know, I recently replayed through it on 110-inch screen, 4K with HDR, and it's just such an it's insane to me that at some point this game will look dated. Like that's nuts, man. It looks so good. But yeah, just yeah. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think Uncharted 4 is like absolutely one of the best examples of a like movie game that isn't a movie. So good. Number 5. XCOM 2. This is another caveat. Sort of like Skyrim, but actually XCOM Enemy Unknown came out this decade as well. 2012, I believe. But I was not into XCOM at all, and actually like XCOM Enemy Unknown is where I really started to get into tactical RPGs. And that's why I avoided it for a while. Everyone was talking about it. I was like, tactical RPG? It's not really my thing. Final Fantasy Tactics? I don't know. I gave Enemy Unknown a shot. Loved it. Enemy Within came out. And I was like, oh, this is so much better. So much better than Enemy Unknown. Oh, this is great. Then XCOM 2 came out. That I think I got like day one or something. And I was like, oh, this is so much better than Enemy Within. This is incredible. Oh my God. And then War of the Chosen came out, the DLC for XCOM 2, and I was like, oh, this is even better. This is unbelievable. And then all like the modding support, you know, all the modding community came out in strength. I'm sure they had been there for a while. But everything solidified after the release of War of the Chosen, where it's now at its current state, where the mods support for XCOM 2 War of the Chosen is pretty good. And now it's like, oh, I can never go back to unmodded War of the Chosen. Like, this is so much better. Like, it just, all throughout this entire decade, XCOM has just been getting better and better and better and better. And it's crazy to think that it could ever get better than this, but it could, I suppose. Yeah, so it's not like, so when I'm talking about it, I'm talking specifically about XCOM 2 with War of the Chosen, with a selection of mods that I personally prefer to play with. That's a pretty specific thing that I'm talking about. But, I mean, you could apply this to just even XCOM 2 in general. But I would say it's probably like my second favorite tactical RPG. Pretty close behind Final Fantasy Tactics. There's some annoying stuff. It's not a perfect game by any means, but just the level of options available to you, the sheer amount of like tactical situations you can find yourself in, like with different enemy combinations, different maps, different character combinations. I mean, there's the amount of just possibilities is staggering. And just going through like the joy of just like flawlessly completing a mission compared to like the pathos and pain of just getting massacred due to your own stupidity or something like that. I mean, it's just an incredible experience. And for some people, I could see just playing through XCOM 2 constantly. That's the only game you ever play. For me, it comes in waves. You know, just recently I was in a wave of XCOM 2, and just reveling in its glory. But then I won't play it for a while. Oh shit! I won't play it for a while. But then I'll come back and I'll just re-experience the joy of why I love this game. It's hard to say if we'll ever actually get an XCOM 3, but like I said, to be honest, XCOM 2, War of the Chosen, with continued mod development, it's almost like we don't even need an XCOM 3. If you compare like base XCOM 2 to fully modded, all good to go, it's practically XCOM 3 already. So again, not necessarily a game that is put on this list because of mods. I don't think it's as drastic as Skyrim. Like, if worse came to worse, I would play XCOM 2 just by default. But I don't... It probably would be at, like, number 10, maybe an honorable mention. It's hard to say, but mods, again, just make it so much better. Number 4. Hollow Knight. The indie game that could. I passed on playing Hollow Knight for a long time. I wasn't big on indie games, and it's just like, I don't know, you're playing a bug or something, you're wandering around, I don't know. For whatever reason, I just didn't care that much about it. And then I did a Let's Play of it. And here it is as the 4th best game of the decade. Gosh, it just does for the just for an indie game, a 2D like Metroidvania style platformer about bugs. It does so much good. I actually have a giant framed piece of artwork of the map, the world map of Hollow Knight. That's how good it is. Yeah, the level design, the music, the gameplay, just the entire world is just so freaking memorable. I'll be like 80 years old on my deathbed, and I'll be like, remember Hollow Knight, how good it was? Like, everyone I've met, I've told them to get into Hollow Knight. Because it's a gaming experience you just have to try. And it's not, I could see it not being everyone's cup of tea. It is difficult. And some parts of the game are stupidly difficult. Such as the God, what is it called? God. You go to like the Heavenly Arena or whatever, and you go through all the boss gauntlets. I have yet to beat that, and I probably never will because it's just stupidly difficult. But the base game itself is doable by pretty much anyone with some patience, and it's sublime. That's the word for it. It is sublime. It's a game that would really never be, it's just the absolute like best example of an indie game ever. Something that would never be put out nowadays by a big studio ever. But it's sublime. Yeah, it's so good. So damn good. All right. But it was only number 4. That means our top 3 are even better. Maybe. Like I said, you could switch 2 through 10 around all over the place. Not that Hollow Knight would ever be below Skyrim, but whatever. Number 3, Monster Hunter World. So, Monster Hunter, franchise near and dear to my heart, as you well know. I've been putting out Mangg Hunter videos for some time. And I first stumbled into Monster Hunter with Try, which came out in 2010. So it does make the cutoff. I certainly could have put Try on this list, but needless to say, World is better. And since I mean, Try was like, I don't even know why I bought Try. I'm not exactly sure. But I had a Wii. I had the Nintendo Wii. I didn't play, like, anything for it. It was just, like, it was a worthless console for the most part. Then I got Monster Hunter Try, and that disc never left my Wii, like, ever again. I'm sure if I pulled out the Wii somewhere at my parents' house somewhere, and you opened the thing, there would probably be Monster Hunter Try in the disc tray. That game, like, dominated that entire console. And then the Wii U came out, and I was like, well, they're probably going to put out a Monster Hunter game for the Wii U. I will buy a Wii U just for the potential Monster Hunter game. Now, there's a lot of portable Monster Hunter games, of course. Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate and X's and G's and all that stuff. But I really strongly dislike playing anything on a portable console. But it's not just that Monster Hunter World is the newest game on a regular console. Monster Hunter World makes this list at number 3 because it is such a vast improvement on the formula, on the franchise. Plenty of hardcore Monster Hunter fans don't care that much for World and actually prefer, like, the latest portable games. Partly due to the sheer amount of content, which is, I understand. But it's just insane to actually prefer the old control systems compared to World. Monster Hunter World brought Monster Hunter into the modern era, which it desperately needed. And not only that, how do I want to phrase it? Basically, Monster Hunter World is far better than I would have expected it to be. Um, Capcom has had their faults in the past. The Monster Hunter team has generally been pretty good with things, but like year after year, they've been pumping out various Monster Hunter games, and they're like, here, have some more subspecies, and these just sort of iterative things. Nothing drastically ever changed. It's crazy to even think Monster Hunter World exists, but that they went and dove into this project, changing the entire framework of like how the game functions. Redoing like control systems and redoing all these new maps where there's no transitions anymore, and putting in all these things and new mechanics, grappling hook, blah blah blah, and they knock it out of the park, man. They not only they do this for just like this first time, they do it so well, to the point of like previously, I mean, I've been a fan of Monster Hunter for a while, but trying to get friends or anybody into Monster Hunter is like, yeah, just pick up Monster Hunter for you and look at these 700 monsters you can fight, and it's like, I did actually try to get a couple friends in to try way back in the day. They did like one hunt or something, and then they never played it again. Because it's really just, especially in the modern day, in the modern world. Haha. In the modern world, it just, for newcomers, it doesn't really cut it. And so now, with Monster Hunter World, it's so much more approachable. Like, it feels just like a modern game that anybody could get into. It still has its little things that not everyone would expect to see. It's got its own, I mean, it's still Monster Hunter at its core, which is also the other good thing. It's not that they changed so much that it's like, what even is this anymore? It's still Monster Hunter. I mean, and any fan of Monster Hunter picked it up and was like, well, we know what this does, we know how this works, blah, blah, blah. It's still, it's such a incredible blend of old and new. And it just makes me so happy that it exists. It makes me so happy that I can play this incredible new modern Monster Hunter game with some mods in like 4K ultra wide. Oh god, instead of hunching over some little 3DS. Oh god, it just makes me so happy. So, it's not perfect. Obviously, yes, we'd all like there to be 700 monsters in these games and blah, blah, blah. But they wanted to create a new framework, for down the line. So when they do Monster Hunter World 3 Ultimate or whatever, and they have hundreds of different monsters, that it's as good as it can be. And as far as like a first game in this new series goes, it's incredible. Especially with Iceborne now. Just makes me very happy. All right. Number 2. The Last of Us. So, I already had another Naughty Dog game on this list, Uncharted 4. And Uncharted 4 came after The Last of Us, but The Last of Us would prove to be the better game. Not necessarily because of gameplay. It's not entirely a gameplay decision here. It's a different style of gameplay, obviously. Last of Us is a bit more focused on stealth and survival. It's not balls to the wall action, though it has some of that. Really, the reason The Last of Us is higher is because of the story. I mentioned that when I think of God of War, I think of the story before the gameplay. Last of Us is definitely the case with that as well. Really the characters more than the story. The interaction and development between Ellie and Joel, it's just, it's like, it's film worthy, easily. Maybe not book worthy. Sure. That's a rare thing in video games, but absolutely movie worthy. And yeah, we could have gotten a Last of Us movie, but that'll probably never happen. And really, we don't need a Last of Us movie. Just play the fucking Last of Us. It's just this emotional journey you go on as you play through this game. And yeah, it certainly helps that the gameplay is really fun. Having this sort of stealth survival thing with the infected and humans and this post-apocalyptic but also beautiful setting, and also these different like set pieces that they develop, these specific moments throughout the campaign where you're like, oh, holy shit. It all blends together into really just a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. How could it not be? I told where I was discussing best games of the decade with some people, I said that if The Last of Us isn't on your best games of the decade list, the only reason is because you haven't played it. And I'll stand by that statement. I think if it isn't on your list, it's because you haven't played it. If you seriously tell me you played through the game and you don't consider it one of the best games of the last 10 years, then I want to see your list. I want to see what you consider to be better. It's not a perfect game. There is no perfect game. And yeah, maybe it's a little like over discussed. We've been pretty like, for a while we were pretty inundated with Last of Us discussion and things like that, and especially with The Last of Us 2 coming out. It's a very well talked about game, but that does not detract from the game itself. Yeah, it's hard to. It's just easily one of the greatest games ever made, as far as I'm concerned. And that's probably not a controversial opinion. They really just did an incredible job. Which means there's a hell of a lot of pressure on Last of Us 2, but that's another discussion entirely. Okay. There's not a whole lot to say about The Last of Us. You either have played it and you know what I'm talking about, so I don't need to explain anything, or you haven't played it, in which case, at this point, what do I need to say? What does anyone need to say to get you to play it? Yeah, it's a Sony, PlayStation exclusive, but come on. All right, number 1. Some of you may be wondering, Mangg, there's no Dark Souls anywhere on your list. There's no Bloodborne. What? Well, we're at number 1, and number 1 is Soulsborne. That's right, I cheated. It's my list. I can do what I want. I'm putting all the Soulsborne games released in the last decade, it's all of them except for Demon Souls. Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Bloodborne, and Sekiro. Putting them all here at number 1, because if I didn't combine them into number 1, it would take up half the list. It's really, if you didn't want me to cheat, if I absolutely had to pick one, it would probably be Bloodborne. But Dark Souls would be pretty close behind it. I'm not picking one. All right. They're all so important to me as a gamer, so influential to me and gaming in general. Such incredible, unique experiences. None of them are perfect. Some are obviously better than others. But, I mean, like, if you follow this channel, which if you're watching this, I'll assume you do, and you've watched various Let's Plays from me, I feel like almost every Let's Play I do, I have to mention, like, Dark Souls or Bloodborne or Sekiro at this point. Like, at some point, I will make some comparison to one of those games while playing something else. Pretty much anything with, like, third-person action. I'll be like, well, you know, if the combat was more like Dark Souls, you know, or if this was closer to Bloodborne, you know, just anything like that. It's such an important part of the gaming center of my brain. There's no way that I couldn't put this at number 1. I mean, hopefully in, like, you know, 20 years, I'll be able to do a top 10 Soulsborne games. And then we can divide them and rank them, but for now, they're all number 1. It's all at number 1. Collectively, they dominate the last decade as far as gaming is concerned for me. Like I said, if I had to pick one, it would probably be Bloodborne, just because the setting and the story and the gameplay all coalesce into the best experience. But each of the games, even Dark Souls 2, is incredible. And there's really nothing else I need to say. I mean, at this point, you're probably familiar with my love of Soulsborne games. And Sekiro, I mean, it doesn't get thrown into the title. Soulsborne, Kiro didn't really ever catch on or whatever. And you could say it's because it's so unique compared to the other games. I think it's just not a catchy name. So I think Soulsborne, even though it doesn't part of the name, it does include Sekiro. Yeah. It's all number 1. It's all number 1. Yeah, we'll leave this off right under an hour, I guess. Really, a pretty incredible decade for gaming. If I had to pick, like, a single year that was better than the rest, I think 2017 might be, like, the best year for me personally. I mean, 2011 was Dark Souls, Portal 2, and Skyrim. So that takes up a good chunk of my list and honorable mentions. But specifically, 2017 had Divinity Original Sin 2, Hollow Knight, Horizon Zero Dawn, Breath of the Wild, and Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. I mean, it was just a very, very fun year. But, I mean, every year has ups and downs. You could look at any year. 2016 had XCOM 2, Titanfall 2, which was a very great game. Overwatch, which it had Doom, Dishonored 2. It's hard to say. 2015 had Bloodborne, Pillars of Eternity, Rise of the Tomb Raider. It was a great decade of gaming. I mean, if you compare, I don't think a tremendous amount has entirely changed in the gaming world between 2010 and 2020. If you look at the games that came out in 2010, you know, you have like Call of Duty Black Ops, Fallout New Vegas, Civilization 5, Mass Effect 2, Red Dead Redemption, Super Mario Galaxy 2. I mean, if you look at those compared to like games released this last year, they're not that different. It's basically the same stuff. It just looks better and maybe, you know, plays a little better, give or take. There's not like these huge, like this gigantic shift in what makes a video game. But that's okay. That's all right. Because as long as they keep putting out good games, I'll be happy. And so far, that's how it's been. So that's going to do us for this list. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. I guess we'll be doing this again in 10 years, which is going to be pretty wild. Maybe gaming will be drastically different in 2030. Maybe we'll have immersive reality or something. Who knows what? But chances are they'll still be releasing similar types of games. And I'll still be playing them. So, my name is Mangg. This has been my top 10 games of the 2010s. And I'll see you fine folks around.